Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So today's video is going to be a very common problem that many of you guys message me every single day for. And this one is regarding battery drain. Now this is common on the E60, E90 and E70s. Many of you message me all the time and say to me there is no problem with your car and you don't know why your battery is draining. So I'm going to tell you and I'm going to show you what actually drains the battery on these cars and why your car is actually draining this battery, and you guys can go and resolve the issue, because the problem can easily be fixed if you know where to look and what is actually draining it. So let's get on to this video.
What? Goddamn, get it done, will ya? Woo! When the blow up now, everybody's so unusual with it. Shit. But said times in his rhymes, cause his memories. We running through New York, so you know.
So the first one on these is the door handles. Now many of you are probably thinking why I'm at the door handles, and if you don't have this feature then it won't apply to you, and if you don't have this feature you won't probably even know what I'm actually going to go on about here. But BMW on the E60s, E90s, 7 Series, on a lot of the cars used a system called Comfort Access. Now if you have handles with BMW you will have a load of lines up here which is basically for the touch, or you come up to here and open your door handle without actually unlocking it with the key. Now what ends up happening is the handles actually go bad. They can go faulty. So what ends up happening, the electronics inside the handle actually fail. And what ends up happening, where the car is trying to actuate itself to unlock the car when you're going near it with the key, or when it picks up the signal from the key, it's actually causing the car to wake up thinking that the key is near the car constantly, or you want the car unlocked. So what ends up happening in turn is, while that's staying awake, that will end up causing your battery drain. Now on the 5 Series and 7 Series, you'll find 4 of these. You'll have 4 Comfort Access handles, on the 2 on the back and 2 on the front. On the 3 Series and 1 Series, you'll only have them on the 2 front doors. Now, when they do go faulty, as I said, it will keep the car awake, and that's purely because the handles itself do fail, and it will keep sending a wake-up signal to the CAS module. When it's sending a wake-up signal, the car will keep everything awake, constantly thinking that you are trying to unlock the car. If you have a battery drain problem, the Comfort Access door handles are the first thing I would check. They are a very known problem and very known for draining your car's battery. They do go faulty and will go faulty, and when they do, your car will instantly drain the battery very fast, and you have a high battery discharge come up on your dash, especially if you've got the iDrive. The car on lift symbol is high battery discharge or high battery drain. So just be sure to check your Comfort Access door handles. You'll know if they're working or not. It's very easy to check. If it don't unlock in the car, or it ain't locking the car, that means your Comfort Access handle is basically knackered. Now this brings me to my next one. The next one that can cause a high battery drain, high battery discharge, is the batteries. When the batteries are going flat, you'll probably notice that you'll get a high battery drain, high battery discharge. That's because most batteries over time reach their recharge cycle, and then the cells end up dying, which then means the car can no longer charge that battery to what it wants anymore, because there is no more battery cells in the battery to actually be charged. Batteries over time do die, and they will kill themselves off completely, and you'll end up with a high battery discharge light. Now bearing in mind it's a BM, it has a lot of electronics, therefore it takes a lot of power, especially to start it up, to wake up all the electronics. By the time you wake up the electronics, this car can be already using 12.5 volts just for all the electronics on the car. And when you start it, especially on this M5, it can go up to 14 volts. So it is using a lot of power as soon from the moment it wakes up. So do bear that in mind. So the first thing I would check is your battery. Another thing you need to be careful of with the battery is when you change it, to make sure you register it. If you don't register the battery, the DME and the system itself inside the car will not know how to sufficiently charge the battery. What it will remember is the old dead battery you had in the car, and then what will keep happening is it will get the light flashing up thinking it's an old battery, trying to recharge it back up higher, because it will think that it's got an old battery in it that's just constantly dying, where in fact you've actually got a new battery that is already holding the charge, so the car will not have to recharge the battery because it knows that the battery is new. That's why it's so important to register a new battery, for the systems to know when to recharge it and when not to, and also for the car not to throw a high battery discharge light thinking that the battery is knackered when it's actually not. A lot of people miss this step and think you can just put a battery in the car. You simply cannot do that. The next one on these is the IBS lead. Now, as I told you before, when I actually bought this M5, the IBS lead was actually brand new. And that's because you've got generation 1 IBS sensor. Now the generation 1s actually went faulty. The chips in them were causing the cars not to work, the car's systems not to work correctly. It was keeping the car awake, not shutting the car down. And that's why they made this new system right here. Now, many of you won't see this on your car. This is a completely different IBS sensor, and this is a completely different setup. This is the generation 2 that BMW released because the old ones were actually no good and causing a lot of problems on the cars. I would check that, because if you do have the old version, the old IBS sensor will be keeping your car awake and will cause a battery drain. The IBS is responsible for actually putting all the modules to sleep if the modules don't do it. And this is designed to actually save your battery power on your battery to stop the whole battery draining. Now, if you're getting a constant drain to the point your battery is dying so much that you can't even crank your car, that means your IBS sensor ain't working. Because the whole job of the IBS sensor is to make sure that it switches off any electronics that ain't switching off by the modules to save power for you to be able to start your car next and get on the move. These cars are not meant to just completely die and leave you with no crank, no start. The IBS sensor is the main responsible component for actually making sure you have enough power to start the car, regardless if there's a battery drain in the car. And then the IBS sensor will store that and let you know when you start the car so you can rectify the fault. But every time that fault comes up, when you've got a high battery discharge, if you notice, your battery ain't completely dying. And that's purely because the IBS sensor is actually saving your power for you to be able to start the car and drive it the following day. If that weren't working, or you didn't have that connected, your battery would die so fast you wouldn't even be able to crank the car, which then means you'll be having to use jump leads. And if you are having to use jump leads constantly to start your car, that means your IBS is not working or your battery has not been registered correctly. So the next one I want to talk to you guys about is the iDrive system itself right here. Now, many people don't even realize this common problem on these cars. A lot of the time, what will drain your battery, and many of you should actually sit in your E60 and you'll hear this. The fans on the iDrive system do not turn off. Now, I do know for a fact in 2003, 2005 model cars, the CCCs were problematic because BMW was using very crap chips inside the CCCs. And that's why a lot of people were having them replaced under warranty. This one actually had it replaced by BMW under warranty. But the fans would stay on. And the reason the fans would stay on is because these would end up overheating, which would end up desoldering the chips from the board, which would cause the fan to actually stay on due to the heat. The fan would actually stay on, which would cause a battery drain on your car, because you've got to think that tiny little fan can actually drain the whole car just like a normal bulb in your car can. Many of you guys know interior bulbs are the quickest and fastest way to actually drain a car battery by leaving them on. And it's no different with the iDrive. If you sit in your car and you hear your fan staying on the iDrive system, that will be your culprit to your battery drain. It's a very, very well-known issue. These fans will stay on and will kill all your battery. The best advice I can give you is when you shut down your car, lock yourself in your car, and you'll be able to hear if the fan's actually staying on. If it is, I would advise you to change your CCC unit itself, because that will just constantly drain your battery, which then means it will constantly keep the car awake. Now, if you do have a 2003 to 2005 car, the MPM is responsible for shutting down all of this right here. So it'll be the whole central electronics, which runs along here completely, or which will be the screen, the IHKA, the CCC, and all of this as well. Now, the MPM will sit in the boot. Many of you guys would have seen in my video. They only fail if water gets in the boot. But if they don't fail, they're responsible for shutting all this down. And if they're not shutting it down, it's for a reason, because something is staying awake. If something is staying awake, it's down to you to find the culprit and eliminate it so the car can go to sleep cycle properly. The next one on these, and I've explained this many times, is the Combi. Now, many people never seem to find this fault on their E60s. They always overlook this. But believe me when I tell you, I've seen this many, many times. The Combi on these, the chips like to go in them. Now, on the older 2003, 2005, especially with the M54, if your Combi actually fails, which is the instrument cluster, you will notice that your disc flap will not close. You'll hear a buzzing sound from the engine where it's not turning off. Now, the buzzing on the M54 engine, if you have that on the 525 engines, that should shut off after a short while. If it don't, and it's staying buzzing constantly, which it should not be, which is a disc flap which is meant to just shut itself after the engine's off, that means your cluster is not putting the car to sleep. Because how the E60 works, if many of you guys don't know, when you take your key out the ignition, when the car actually goes to sleep, the heater control flaps will close itself in. They start to close. When they close, the system itself, which will be the iDrive screen, and all the speakers and the amp will turn itself off. It starts powering down individual items one at a time. So the IHK will turn itself off, the amp will turn itself off, the iDrive will turn itself completely off. Then the Combi is the last one that actually goes off. Then the Combi, you'll hear that completely shut off, and you'll see your needles right here. They will go to the bottom as soon as it's actually gone into sleep mode, and you'll stop hearing any sounds under the engine. Now the Combi is the last one that actually turns off. That's why if this don't turn off, your whole car will not go to sleep. The chips are known to go bad in them, and that's on a lot of the models. Do not underestimate it and do not overlook it. It is a common issue. The cluster itself cannot be repaired. The easiest option is to buy another cluster on eBay or anywhere and just clone it. It's very, very easy, and then just pull it straight in the car. They're not hard to actually do, but it is a common issue, and I just wanted to bring this one up because a lot of people overlook this, but this will drain your car's battery. And that's because the car won't be going into proper sleep cycle, which then means you're going to end up with a dead battery. Now the next one that drains a lot of the BMW batteries, which I see very, very common, and I've done videos on this many, many times, is about using and leaving cigarette lighters inside the car. Now, this is a common thing a lot of people tend to do because they are too lazy to take out their chargers or their cigarette lighter chargers out of their car. These cars are made to wake up with anything that is using power, and I mean anything. So if you leave a cigarette lighter in there and it's staying awake, it will keep the whole car awake. It was just the way BMW designed these, and it is a common thing a lot of people do. I get a lot of messages after I tell people to take whatever it is out of their cigarette lighter, if they've got it in, leave it overnight, and they come back to me telling me how grateful they are that their battery drain problem has now been solved since they've removed that. And that's purely because a lot of people leave that in and don't even realize that these actually drain your battery. So if you do have one of them in, make sure you take it out at night and do not leave it plugged in your car. Because if you do, it will drain your battery, and everyone always overlooks this one as well because they seem to be oblivious to that will actually cause the battery drain on your car. But believe me, this is the most common culprit I see. Everyone wants to blame BMW, and they're trying to trace a fault that don't even exist when it's their own problem by using one of these chargers and leaving it in there overnight, which actually drains their battery. Now, the next one on these. If many of you guys don't know, these use a megahertz signal to the car, which is linked to the CAS module. Now, you've got 315, you've got 434, and I believe you've got 858. Now, depending on your megahertz signal, it's like a radio frequency, which is what the diversity antenna is actually used for, to pick up the key's frequency to unlock the car. These, when at close proximity to your car, now many of you guys will probably already know what I'm going to be saying here. If you go near your car without even unlocking it, just with the key in your pocket, especially on your M52 engines, you will hear your fuel pump prime. That is because these cars already detect the key at close range. This is another common battery drain problem that is very, very overlooked, is people keeping their key with them all the time near where they park their car. So for instance, if you park your car outside the front of your house and you leave basically your key right next to your front door, the car will not go into sleep mode because the car is constantly detecting the key, regardless if you've got comfort access or not. It's detecting the megahertz signal, which in turn is causing the CAS module to keep waking up and then going back to sleep, waking up and going back to sleep, because it can pick up the key's signal right next to the car. Now in turn, all that's doing is the car's not going into sleep, which then means it's waking up everything on the car, which is then going to cause you a battery drain. This is something many people do as well. They'll keep the key on them and the car will literally be right next to them. They'll sleep with the key either on top of the window or somewhere near, where directly above the car. Make sure to keep the keys very far away and out of range of the cars, because it does wake them up. Even this M5, when I come near it with my key, everything on it starts buzzing, and that's before I've even unlocked it. And that's purely because it's already picking up the key signal in range. And if you don't believe me, if you've got an M52, you've got an N62, go and try it out yourself. You don't have to have comfort access, just go near the car with the key, and that's without unlocking it, and you'll hear your fuel pumps all prime. That's because the CAS is already alert and already alerting the module that the key's next to it, which then means it's ordering the car to wake up and giving it the wake up signal. Be very, very careful with that because it's not a very well known problem and many people are still not aware of it still today. Do not leave the key in close range of the cars. Believe me on that. Remember, I've got 2 of them and I know these cars very, very well, like the back of my hand. Keeping these keys away from the car is the best thing you can do. And if you've got comfort access, don't try and keep it too close to the car because that's how many of the comfort access cars actually get hijacked or jacked by thieves, for you leaving the key too close to the car where people can you pick up your key signal and unlock the car and then steal your car away. My best advice is keep your keys in a safe or keep them in an RFD case so they cannot be picked up, or better still, put them in the microwave. So this brings me on to my next one, which I have to say, and I have to bring up. Ungenuine retrofits to these cars. Now, let me explain to you. When I got this M5, many of you guys would have remembered from my first video, this car was ridiculed in crap, and I mean crap galore. It had DVD headrests with TV screens in the headrest. It had PlayStation in here, Freeview TV, a different amp system, a subwoofer. Whoever, they went completely mega to make this car like a living room. Yeah, it had controllers, headphones, the lot. BMW tried to diagnose this car's battery drain problem. This is the reason I got it cheap. They swore blind it had nothing to do with the OEM retrofits and anything else on the car, and they could not find a fault for love nor money. The owner got rid of it because he couldn't find a fault and nobody else could. They were overlooking all the crap that he had added to the system. And when I tell you crap, he had added all grounds to the grounds of the car, live wires to the lives of the car, which in turn was putting more current to the modules. And the modules are only designed to turn off what is programmed and coded to the car to work in sync with all the modules. Everything he had fitted to this car was not programmed, synced in, or tuned properly to be able to shut down in time with the modules when it goes into sleep mode, which in turn, it was staying awake, which is then kicking all the other modules awake because the car is detecting that something is not going to sleep and something is taking the power. The car cannot shut that off, which in turn was causing a high battery discharge. When I got the car, I ripped all that out completely. It took me nearly 2 days to do it from all under the seats, everywhere in the car, rip all the wiring from the front to the back. And I had to rewire everything, including the iDrive system here, because they had ripped out all the wires. I had to do a whole rewiring circuit here, plug everything back up for the most fiber leads from what they changed. And since I've done that, and I'm talking last year, that has got rid of my whole battery drain issues. The worst thing you can do to these cars is put ungenuine retrofits. The only things I've got in here is an MMI box, but they are synced to the systems and the CAN lines, high and low, and the PT CAN and everything else properly. Not the way these retrofits were done. The guy put way too much in his car. And obviously, BMW didn't want to touch that because obviously the owner didn't want any of that coming out because he didn't think it was that, and he didn't want any of that touch because he wanted to look like the car was fancy. But because they didn't want to do that, this is how I got the car cheap. I got it, I found the issue, and I ripped everything straight out. It was a big, big job, and I mean completely big. I had, like I said, a lot of rewiring to do because they had cut into wires, spliced into things into the car to make it all work, cut into the amp, cut into the iDrive, just to get it all configured to work, to have TV on the screen here and everywhere else and have everything come on the screen. It took me a very, very, very long time. But in the end, I got there, rewired it all, done it in over 2 days, ripped out all the junk. Many of you guys would have seen on the video all the pictures I put up regarding all the junk that was fitting there. It was absolutely incredible. But that is how I fixed the known battery drain issue on this car, for something that most people overlooked, or people were just too ignorant to even care because of the fact they didn't want to get rid of the junk that was actually causing the battery drain. But just be careful with that, guys. If you do have something that isn't a genuine fit by BMW, that will be causing your battery drain issue. Subs, amps, anything like that, these cars will not allow. So trying to hardwire it to the back of your CIC to get an amp and power it, you got to remember, you've got to add power to all these systems. Anything you put on a battery, anything you try and put on it will cause a battery drain issue, because the NPM and all the modules do not notice it, cannot put it to sleep. Therefore, if they can't put it to sleep, that is staying alive in the car, which is going to cause a battery drain. So just be aware of that. My best advice, do not add aftermarket crap to your car. If you want a more powerful speaker system, if you want more powerful speakers, just buy a bloody car with a Logic 7 or Harman Kardon as they call it these days and be done with. This is why I don't buy cars without it, and you would have seen on my F20 I retrofitted it in there because my M5 has the Logic 7. If you don't have it, well, don't try and add it because the car will not tolerate it and you will end up with a battery drain. So if many of you have retrofitted anything, stop overlooking your retrofit and go and remove it because that's what's causing your battery drain. Okay guys, so as you've seen there, I've now gone over all your high battery drain and discharge issues on your BMW. If you follow these steps and do not be ignorant and do not overlook certain things, you will rectify your battery drain issues very, very easily. A lot of you will have a battery drain issue, yet you've retrofitted a load of junk to your car. And them kind of people are the ones that overlook what the job they've done to cause the battery drain issue, because I can almost guarantee when they bought the car, it didn't have a battery drain issue. It only had a battery drain issue since it's been in their hands. Majority of the time, battery drain issues only come from idiots who put stuff onto the car or do stuff stupidly, like leaving one of them USB charging sockets in the cigarette lighter, which causes a battery drain. So just take your time, go over your car and think of what you did which caused a battery drain. Did you add anything to the lights? Did you add anything to the grounds? If you did, remove it. It cannot stay there. Unless you want to keep having a battery drain fault come up all the time, remove it, because it will not go away. You cannot code it out purely because the system does not like it and it wants it removed. If it cannot put it to sleep, the system will not be happy with it. That's why many people with these E60s, E90s do a lot of genuine retrofits. So it's all synced with the system, so there is no problems after. Like I said to many of you, if you want a good system for your car, go for the MMI box and put Apple CarPlay in your car. You can do a genuine aux fit to these E60s just as they would have come from the factory and just use it. It's the best way, but if you want more bass and more sound, well, you should have upgraded to a Logic 7 or a Harman Kardon system when you got your E60 or E90. But don't try and fit aftermarket stuff because it just will not work, and I can assure you right now, I know it won't, because of the way it's rigged to the system. You can't hard tap into a fuse, you can't hard tap into a live because the car can not shut the power down. Therefore, it's going to cause battery drain and you're going to end up with that issue for the rest of your life until you get rid of the car. So I hope this is actually going to rectify a lot of your issues, guys. Thank you very much for watching this. BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.